depression to my mother a conversation. Mom, my depression is a shapeshifter. One day it is as small as a firefly in the palm of a bear. The next, it's the bear. On those days, I play dead until the bear leaves me alone. I call the bad days the dark days. Mom says try lighting candles. When I see a candle, I see the flesh of a church. The flicker of a flame, sparks of a memory younger than noon. I am standing beside her open casket. It is the moment I learn every person I ever come to know will someday die. Besides, Mom, I'm not afraid of the dark. Perhaps that's part of the problem. Mom says I thought the problem was that you can't get out of bed. I can't. Anxiety holds me a hostage inside of my house, inside of my head. Mom says, where did anxiety come from? Anxiety is the cousin visiting from out of town depression felt obligated to bring to the party. Mom, I am the party. Only I am a party I don't want to be at. Mom says, why don't you try going to actual parties? See your friends. Sure, I make plans, but I don't want to go. I make plans because I know I should want to go. I know sometimes I would have wanted to go. It's just not that much fun having fun when you don't want to have fun, Mom. You see, Mom, each night, insomnia sweeps me up in his arms, dips me in the kitchen in the small glow of the stove light. Insomnia has this romantic way of making the moon feel like perfect company. Mom says, try counting sheep. But my mind can only count reasons to stay awake, so I go for walks. But my stuttering kneecaps clank like silver spoons held in strong arms with loose wrists. They ring in my ears like clumsy church bells, reminding me I am sleepwalking on an ocean of happiness I cannot baptize myself in. Mom says happy is a decision, but my happy is as hollow as a pinpricked egg. My happy is a high fever that will break. Mom says I am so good at making something out of nothing and then flat out asks me if I am afraid of dying. No, I am afraid of living. Mom, I am lonely. I think I learned how when Dad left, how to turn the anger into lonely, the lonely into busy. So when I tell you I've been super busy lately, I mean I've been falling asleep watching SportsCenter on the couch to avoid confronting the empty side of my bed. But my depression always drags me back to my bed until my bones are the forgotten fossils of a skeleton sunken city. My mouth a boneyard of teeth broken from biting down on themselves. The hollow auditorium of my chest swoons with echoes of a heartbeat, but I am a careless tourist here. I will never truly know everywhere I have been. Mom still doesn't understand. Mom, can't you see that neither can I?
Heavy, huh?
Yeah.
And this is what a lot of people in our society and our culture feel every single day. One of the lines that she says in there that I find just so profound was this: I'm sleepwalking on an ocean of happiness that I can't baptize myself in. And I wonder how many people come to church feeling that exact same way. And one of the things that we just do as church members and as Christians, if you will, we just kind of share, hey, just get over it. You know, we just look at them and we don't have an understanding of who they are and what they're really going through. And so we just kind of sit there and we just go, get over it. And they're trying to get over it, but they can't. And so today I thought, man, how can I start off the service as heavy as possible? But actually the reality is, I think we need to hear that. And the sad part is that video was done at the beginning of 2014, the end of 2013. That wasn't even like anytime soon, but this is the generation that we're in. And I don't want to say generation, I want to say culture that we're in. Because I don't think it's a generational thing. I think a lot of times as kids, we pick up on our parents. We see what our parents are doing, and if our parents are depressed and our parents are suffering with anxiety and these things and depression, and what happens is we pick up on that, and now what happens is we live in that lifestyle as well. Did that make sense?
Yes.
And now today I'm not going to be your therapist, but I think it's something we need to talk about. And I'm not going to talk about depression. I'm not going to talk about anxiety. Matter of fact, what I want to talk about is this. We're in this series called Carpe Diem. The tagline, seize your moment. And the idea is, how in the world can we seize a moment if that is where we're living? How can we expect a culture of people, a society of people to own their moment or seize their moment if they live in depression, if they live in anxiety, or if they're dealing with a hard situation? What do we do in the midst of that? And here's the enemy's greatest lie. This is one of the things I thought about doing this. Is the enemy's greatest weapon against us is, shh, don't tell. You're going through a hard time? Don't tell. Your marriage is going through something pretty heavy? Don't tell. We have created a society where we want it to be a fantasy land. It's good. The reality is for us, is shh, don't tell. You're dealing with a problem, shh, don't tell. Matter of fact, do you know how many people I know have diseases? Their bodies are falling apart, and they don't want to burden anybody with what they have. So what do? Shh, they don't tell. And here's the thought process I have. When we leave the burdens of our situations and heart unspoken, we miss opportunities for grace, mercy, and love to take place, either for us or from us. When we stay silent, when we don't speak, we can never move forward with the way that God needs to heal us or help us. Why? Because the people around you can't help you. Did that make sense? And I started thinking about that. That's why we don't say anything. That's why we leave things unspoken, right? Because we don't want people to help us. I can do it on my own. I will get through this. And if you're a man in this place, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You can drive a nail through your hand on accident. Another man will run up to you and be like, do you need help? You're like, no, I got this. Oh, right? That's just the way we are. Why? Because we were brought up that way. This is the way you're a man, tough it out. You know what I mean? I remember my dad sharing with me, I had this, the first as a pastor, the first suicide attempt that I had from a young girl. We were up at a camp, and this girl, she was passed around. She was like a foster child. She was passed around from home to home to home. And just the bad experiences. And I think I'm 20 years old at this moment in my life. And this girl, we're up in a forest at night, and this girl decides to book it. Runs into the forest, disappears into the night. And somebody looks at me and says, hey Craig, I think that girl just ran into the woods. Why didn't you stop her? Like, you know, that's like your first reaction. Like, why didn't you? And it was like, what do we do now? It's like, okay, send out a search party. And so now we have, and this is what I've learned about search parties. Never go on search parties by yourself. Always go in pairs. Because I was the lucky one that found this young girl up a tree, threatening to jump because she wanted to end it all at the age of 12, 13. This is how bad her life has been. Now here's the thing, we come in and we're like, well, is it for attention or is there really something going on? Whether it's for attention or not, the reality is something's going on. Something needs to be done. And so I found her all by myself. And I'm sitting there and she's in this tree and she's threatening to jump and I'm yelling, we're over here! And it echoes, we're over here, we're over here. And there was nothing I could do. Except sit there and do my best to counsel her out of this tree. I was there for about 40 minutes trying to counsel her down out of this tree before anybody ever found me. And I got to this moment in my young life where I said this, and this is where my head was. Because in the moment, when you're in the moment, the adrenaline's pumping and you're sitting there and you're trying to think through everything, and I'm watching this happen, and then finally got to the point where I was like, do it, girl, just jump. Because here's what I knew. At the height she was at, she wouldn't kill herself, but I think I could at least knock her down and break her fall. because she was kind of tiny and I was kind of a bigger dude. So I was like, I think I can get her. And it would end it. We might have to go to the hospital, but at least she wouldn't die and we got out of the tree and we're going to be okay. Do you know what I mean? This is what it is. So I was like, girl, if you're going to do it, just do it. I'm like, ready. Like, you know what I mean? I'm like, ready. And she's like, no, I think I'll just come down. And I was like, yes. She starts to come down the tree and one of the other counselors comes running up. Craig, did you find her? Oh, and he spooked her and she went back up the tree. Just go get everybody. I'm going to try and get her down again. I was like, girl, come down. You were coming down. Come down, right? Finally, we get her down out of the tree. We put her, we call the cops, you know, like, what do we do with this? And they're like, I don't know. It's your problem. Literally, that's what the cops told us. The cops literally said, I was like, what do you do? I'm like, what do we do? And they're like, she's your problem. We called her parents. Her parents knew she was going to camp, so they booked a vacation. They were nowhere to be found. That's the problem of why she climbed a tree. Does that make sense? And I sat down. I remember this. I sat down. And I started to just break down crying. I'm 20 years old. I'm not going to deal with, like, you know, a 12-year-old trying to take her life. This was a new experience for me, okay? And not only that, there were troubles going on at my job anyways. I was already thinking about leaving my job. So now I'm thinking I'm leaving my job. I'm getting married. This is one of the thought processes. I'm getting married. I'm leaving my job. And now I have a 12-year-old that's trying to commit, like, suicide. And now we have to be on suicide watch the rest of camp with this young girl. And I just kind of broke down. Have you ever had one of those moments where you're like, done? Well, my dad just happened to be up there. And he looks at me and he goes, why are you crying? Stuff! There's just a lot of stuff going on. I was like, suck it up, kid. Come on, you got this. Come on, you got this, you know? And I sat in that moment and I was like, man, like, you know, and he's my dad, so I'm like, you're right, Dad, you're right, come on, like, suck it up, you know? It's like, rub some dirt in it, let's move forward, like, you know, type of an idea. And I was sitting there, and I don't think he did anything wrong because he was just doing what his dad taught him, right? And his dad rolled bulls for a living and got, like, you know, like, got the horns a few times. He, like, rubbed some dirt in it and get back on the bull, like, you know what I mean? And that's not a joke, like, that literally happened, like, he was a cowboy. That's what he did. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, this is our society though. We repeat certain things. And I was reading this. This is why we don't talk. We don't want to burden somebody else. And we should just suck it up and deal with it. Did that make sense? And I realized this. This is my next thought process. Is the opportunities are not just for our healing. They are designed for us to create relationships and become community. Here's what we have to recognize. When you start to speak out what you're going through, when you start to share, this starts to build a community. If and only if one thing happens, this. We need to stop trying to fix people and try having a relationship with them. See people as people, not projects. Amen. Does this make sense? There are people that don't want to talk with everybody else because why? They're like, oh, I'm just the project. Hey, can we go and have lunch? Why do you want to have lunch with me? Because you actually care about me or because you're going to try and fix me? You know what I mean? And how do you know that? What's the difference? You know what I mean? When you try to start fitting people into your schedule. Well, I have a Thursday at 2. It sounds like a doctor appointment, right? It's, hey, when are you free? I don't know, when are you free? Let's try to get together and have a lunch. And when we get together and have lunch, let's not even really talk about the situation. Let's just talk about each other for a little bit and how everybody's doing. And then if that comes up in the conversation, let it come up in the conversation. But don't sit there and try to fix people. Don't just sit down and be like, what's your problem? Let's deal with this. If we're going to try and fix people constantly, you're going to try to be somebody's therapist or counselor. And that's not what they need. They don't need a therapist or counselor in that moment. They needed a friend. Does this make sense? And this is where I think we need to get in our culture and in our society today, that we need to try to stop fixing people and just have relationship with people. And then there was one person that I thought, man, he did this the best. Jesus. Now this is not just a canned church answer. Like, this is like legit, because Jesus is real. And I don't know if you guys ever like contemplated that at all. Like, you don't get to decide if Jesus was a real person, because he was. History has proven there's a real man named Jesus. He walked on the earth and he did what he said that what is recorded. Your job isn't to decide if Jesus is real. Your job is to decide if he is God or not. Does that make sense? So there was this man that walked around and he did relationships so well. And he didn't try to fix people. He just had a conversation with them. Does this make sense? And here's the best thing. I want to share this with you. This is where we're going to land on today. It's going to be John chapter 4. And this is one of the most impactful pieces of scripture that I think we have. And the reason why it's so impactful is it hits a couple things. It hits gender stuff. It hits cultural stuff. And it hits religion all in one shot. And Jesus does this by doing this. I'm not trying to fix you. I'm just trying to have a relationship. Are you guys with me on this one? If you don't know the story or the account, I'm going to share it with you. John chapter 4 verse 1. It says this. Now when Jesus learned that the Pharisees had heard that Jesus was making and baptizing more disciples than John, although Jesus himself did not baptize, but only his disciples. That's a key quote. Does that make sense? That's why it's in the Bible. Just remember that. Verse 3. He left Judea and departed again for Galilee. And he had to pass through Samaria. So he came to a town of Samaria called Sychar, near the field that Jacob had given to his sons Joseph. And as I read that, you all just blanked out. I know that's how it works, okay? So here's what I want to show you. I want to show you a map. Boom. I don't have my laser pointer. Dang it. You want to, darn it, I'll get it next service. This map, it just shows that region right there. Okay. Up at the top, you're going to see Galilee. Right in the center, you will see Samaria. At the very bottom, you will see Judea. It's sitting right next to the computer if you're looking for it. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, he's trying to hide, but I called it out, so I might as well just get it from him. All right. Yeah, look at that. Sweet kid. Woo! All right, yeah, there it is. So, up here, you have Galilee. Right here, you have Samaria. Down here, you have Judea. Now, right there is Jerusalem, okay? So now, that's really far back for you to see, so I'm going to enhance it just a little bit. And so right now, you have Galilee right here, Samaria here, and right there's Jerusalem, which means all of this down here would be Judea. Everybody follow me on this one? He's here in Jerusalem and Judea somewhere in this moment, okay? When he starts talking, he says, I have to go back up to Galilee. More than likely, when he's going to Galilee, he's going to this place right up here called Cana. That's where he's from, well, in the area where he's from. Does that make sense to everybody? I want to show you this. So you see this area right here, Samaria? That is a no-fly zone. You do not go through Samaria if you are Jewish. Matter of fact, you will actually go this direction outside of Samaria. You'll follow around here. You'll go up this, follow the Jordan River all the way up to over here, and then cut across, cutting out this entire middle section. You will spend an extra 3 days walking just to bypass these people. And here's the reason why. Samaria, if you don't know, was the original Israel. See, when David split, or when Solomon died, his two sons took over. And one took a northern kingdom, and one took a southern kingdom. The southern became Judea, the northern became Israel. The capital of Israel was Samaria. Does that make sense? Samaria is literally right here, and Sychar is literally about 6 miles away from it. Everybody with me on that one? Now here's what would happen. The reason why they don't like him is they have mixed blood. See, what happened is the northern kingdom was kind of, I guess the best word you can use was wretched. They started believing in other gods. They started believing in other things. And what happened is they would actually intermix their gods with the God of creation, the true God, and God did not like that very much. There were all these accounts that took place. Matter of fact, most of your Old Testament records the bad things that Israel started to do because they started following other gods. Everybody still with me on this one? There was a northern kingdom, okay, the Assyrians, and the Assyrians came in and they took over Israel at that moment. Did that make sense? They took over Israel, not Judea. They took over Israel, and as they took over Israel, the Assyrians did one thing. They thought through their culture. And so what they would do, and I apologize if this bothers you at all, but this is literally what happened. It's historical. They would rape all the women to get them pregnant, so therefore they could almost eradicate the entire culture from existence. Did that make sense? It was like not just genocide and kill them all. It was, we're going to eradicate the bloodline. That's what their thought process was. And that are the Sumerian people. Everybody with me on that one? So the Jewish people, because they believed in other gods, because they weren't like fully Jewish, if you will, or Hebrew in this case, okay? They were like, we're not even gonna talk with them. It's a horrible thing to associate with them. Are you guys with me on that one? So they would take a 3-day journey. By the way, from Jerusalem to Cana, it's about 85 to 90 miles. You travel about 18 to 20 miles a day. Does that make sense? So you can kind of figure out how long the walk is. If you went to the outskirts and went up, it's 125 miles to 130 miles. It's an extra 2 to 3 days walking, just because you don't like a group. Does that make sense? Are you guys with me on this one? Jesus was like, I ain't gonna do that. I'm lazy. I don't know what he was thinking. I was like, I don't want to actually do that. Let's just walk right through it, right? And the disciples are like, are we really doing this? And they're like, yeah, let's just go. And so they start walking straight up. Now, they're probably 2 days into this journey, and they end up dead center right there at Jacob's well. And this is where this encounter happens. Now, he sends his disciples off to go get some food. And as he's sitting at this well, this is the account that takes place. So does this give you kind of a picture now of the atmosphere, the environment? It's not lush and green. We're in a desert. It's rocky, scattered trees here and there. Everybody with me on this one? So now this is what happens. Oh yeah, by the way, in case you're wondering, why did I share all of that? Because of this. God will and has gone out of his way to meet with you. It's one of the things you have to remember. He's not gonna go around you. He's gonna do whatever he has to do to meet with you. Amen? Amen. Here we go. Here's the next part. So he's there at Jacob's well. So Jesus, wearied as he was from his journey, was sitting beside the well. It was about the 6th hour. It was noon. Okay? It's about noon, maybe 1 o'clock, okay? A woman from Samaria came to draw water. Jesus said to her, give me a drink. We're going to put a little pause right there. You don't get water in the afternoon. Does this make sense? You don't get water in the afternoon. And there's a ton of reasons why. Number one reason, it's hot. You're not going to go and walk all the way from your home. It might be a mile away from their house, maybe a half a mile away from where their actual dwelling places are. And so you're walking to this well, and you're in the middle of the day, and you're going to fill this bucket up, this bucket or jar or whatever it up with water, which has got to be a good like at least 10 pounds, maybe even more, 20 pounds depending on how much water you get. And you're going to carry that back in the heat of the day. I do not think so. So if you have a woman showing up at a well in the afternoon, you have to ask questions. And the one question that we found theologically is that she was outcasted. We can see all the women would usually get up, and it would be kind of the trek in the morning, usually with the kids. We're going to the well, and you would go as a crowd to the well, and everybody would kind of help each other out and have this conversation. Why? Because you were community with people. Does that make sense? She is by herself in the middle of the afternoon. What do we know she does not have? Community. So for some reason, this woman is outcasted. And I find this verse, this thing, the last part there, give me a drink. How many times do you ever see God asking something? Does that make sense? I need something and only you can provide it. This is an amazing thing, but she doesn't know who he is, so it's not amazing to her. Does that make sense? So, give me a drink. For his disciples had gone away into the city to buy food. Verse 9, the Samaritan woman said to him, how is it that you, a Jew, ask for a drink from me, a woman of Samaria? For Jews had no dealings with Samaritans. Verse 10, Jesus answered her, if you knew the gift of God and who it is that is saying it to you, give me a drink, you would have asked him and he would have given you living water. Now just real quick, they're real people, right? Is this not a weird conversation? Like, I mean, so many times we sit back and we read the scriptures as if, oh yeah, well they're just, they're all like holy. No! This woman is sitting there, this strange man, a Jew, is sitting there, and she's like, I'm going to go just drop this down this well and just stare at you. Like, do you get what I'm saying? Like, and she's like staring at him like, what's going on? What's happening? Like, you know what I mean? And then he's just like, give me a drink. And she's like, I don't know about that, sir. One, you're Jewish. That's one. Two, I'm a woman. Three, I'm from Samaria. You are all jacked up. Does that make sense? This is not a normal situation. And I want you to get to that point when you're reading this where it's like, this is not normal. Right? And then just to add to the weirdness of this entire conversation, well, if you knew who was speaking to you, you would have asked me for a drink. And I would have given you living water. Because that's a thing. Do you get what I'm saying here? Like, this is like a conversation. I would have given you living water, and she's like, oh, this is what's happening. Like, you know what I mean? Like, what do you do with that? And so she comes back. The woman said to him, sir, you have nothing to draw water with, and the well is deep. Where do you get that? Where do you get that living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob? He gave us the well and drank from it himself, as did his sons and the livestock. So here's the hidden thing behind what she's saying. If you would have asked me for a drink, I would have given you living water. So she fires back with, A, you don't have a bucket. Right? And that well is deep. So good luck, sir. Two, right? Two, this is a big thing. What do you mean you have living water? Do you not know that this is Jacob's well? And you have to understand, even though she's Samaritan, she also has the Jewish culture, the Hebrew culture in her bloodline, and she knows probably all about this. So especially if you're at Jacob's well, you understand Abraham, you understand all these people, and you understand that this well is sacred. Are you with me on this one? And so she looks at him and she goes, are you claiming to be better than them? By this living water? And here's what you need to know about wells. Wells were a gift from God. Why? If you're in the desert and you're hot and you're thirsty, what do you want? Water. Now you think this is a duh statement, but you have to understand, when we are thirsty, we go to the sink, the faucet, the water bottles, wherever, right? We don't understand this. When they were thirsty, they were in desperate need to find water, and it just wasn't readily available. So a well to this culture was a gift from God. Are you guys with me on this one? It was also the place of community. And in the Old Testament, all the major key players found their wives at the well. In case you cared. If you think about it, this is where they found their wives. Okay? So there's significance about a well. And so there's this backdrop to her now sitting there going, you got nothing to draw it from, and I think you're claiming to be something that you're not. Okay? And that's where she kind of ends it. And Jesus said to her, everyone who drinks of this water will be thirsty again. But whoever drinks of the water that I give them will never be thirsty again. The water that I will give him will become in him a spring of water welling up to eternal life. This is a random conversation at a well. And she's starting to pick up on some of the key Jewish notes here. Eternal life, living water. She knows about the Messiah. These are key phrases that we find in the Old Testament about the Messiah. And so she kind of freezes on that, and she says this. The woman said to him, sir, give me this water so that I will not be thirsty or have to come here to draw water. Why would she say that? Because she's lazy? No, because this well for her was not a gift. This well for her was not community. This well for her was the burden. Sir, if you have this, and I'm never going to be thirsty. So she's taking the literal approach, right? If I'm never going to be thirsty again, ever, then give it to me. Because if I never have to come back to this place ever again, if I never have to live through the shame every day that I live through and carry the burden that I live through, then by all means, sir, give me this living water. And how many of us live in our life and we say that same thing? I believe the girl that gave, Sabrina, the girl that gave that spoken word in the very beginning, would say the exact same thing. If you got something to get rid of this, then by all means, I'll do what it takes. I just don't want to feel this way anymore. Right? So here's what we do as people. Ooh, let's fix you. This is not what Jesus does, though. Watch this. It says, come to draw water. And Jesus said to her, go call your husband and come here. Because that's a good thing, right? Well, if you want this living water, go call your husband. Have him come here, right? And the woman answered him, I have no husband. And Jesus said to her, you are right in saying, I have no husband. For you have had 5 husbands, and the one you have now is not your husband. What you have said is true. How you like that? Ooh, let's fix you. Let's just call out what it is. Right? That's not what Jesus does. He doesn't want to try to fix you. He just really calls out, hey, go get your husband. Why? Because what happens at the well? You can find husbands there. Because it's a community thing. That's where it is. But he knows that she's there by herself in the afternoon. So he knows there's something wrong there, right? And some of you guys will be like, but he's God. He knows everything. That could also be true. Okay? And so here's what happens. Go get your husband. I don't have a husband. You're right. You don't have a husband. Matter of fact, you've had 5 husbands, and the person you're with now isn't even your husband. Am I wrong? No, sir, you're not wrong. Now check this out. This is very interesting. This is just a side note, rabbit trail, if you will. The word husband, the Greek word that they use there, is actually also the same word for man. And if you guys want to understand this, and this is for some of the younger people and that type of thing, marriage is only considered marriage not by paperwork, but by the act that happens on a wedding night. It's called the wedding bed. That is the act that actually makes you married. So in this case, with this case right here, we actually don't know if she was actually married and divorced 5 times, or if God was just calling out how many people she's been with, and the person she's with now isn't even her husband. Did that make sense? Because in the eyes of God, this is how they see things, not the way that we see things. Okay, so watch this. It could also mean this. In the Jewish traditions, you could only get married and divorced like 3 times. Anything outside of that, they kind of go, whoa, put the brakes on, okay? There's some things there that happen. The next thing about that you need to know about this conversation is the women never really had a right to divorce. It was always the man wanting to divorce. So maybe, just maybe, she didn't want to have divorces, but this is what was given to her. Does this make sense? Because of who she picked, or whatever the case may be, or how it all came about, she has been either divorced 5 times, and the person she's with now is not her husband, because she probably just gave up and said, I don't want to get married. You know what I mean? Like, I'll just do this because it's just a lot easier for me. If this is the truth, now we know why she's at the well by herself. Does this make sense? Now we know why she's outcasted and shamed. And this, all Jesus did is he brought it to the forefront. He just said, is this why you're here? Is this why you're here? And the next part it says this. The woman said, and sir, I perceive that you are a prophet. Y'all think? Right? I perceive that you are a prophet. Our fathers, and now I love this, because she's about to shift the conversation. Oh, I see that you're a prophet. Let's stop talking about my life and let's get into something different. Right? I see that you're a prophet. Our fathers worshipped on this mountain, but you say that in Jerusalem is the place where people ought to worship. Jesus said to her, woman, believe me, the hour is coming when neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem will you worship the Father. You worship what you do not know. We worship what we know, for salvation is from the Jews. But the hour is coming and is now here when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth. For the Father is seeking such people to worship Him. So she throws this out. Oh, I see. You're one of those Jesus people. Put it in nowadays terms, right? You're just one of those godly people. Well, I'm a Samaritan. I don't get to worship on your mountain. I don't get to worship in Jerusalem. I don't get to do that. Because the mountain that they worshipped on was Mount Giza, or so, I think that's how you pronounce it, Giza. That's where they worshipped. And it was deemed not to be able to worship on that mountain from God, because other gods were worshipped on that mountain. Everybody still tracking with me on this one? And so basically she's like, well, I'm not allowed to worship anything anyways. And what is she saying? All she's pretty much saying is this: I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough to worship. I'm not good enough to be on your mountain. I'm not good enough to be in society. I'm not good enough anywhere. Are you guys catching what she's saying? And Jesus comes back and goes, what are you talking about? It's not about that mountain or this mountain. It's not about that. This is the moment that Jesus is talking about relationship with her. And he sits back and he says, it's not about worshiping this mountain. It's not worshiping on that mountain. What it's about is this: spirit and truth. And in your life, woman, what is the spirit in your life? What God do you truly worship? And what do you say is truth? And he sees this, or she sees this. He's not trying to fix me. He's not telling me I'm wrong. He's inviting me in. He's inviting me into the conversation. He's inviting me into relationship. And so she comes back and she says this: God is spirit, and those who worship Him must worship in spirit and truth. Verse 25, the woman said to him, I know that the Messiah is coming, He who is called Christ. Next. When He comes, He will tell us all things. And Jesus said to her, I who speak to you am He. Just then His disciples came back. They marveled that He was talking with a woman, but no one said, what do you seek? Or why are you talking with her? So the woman left her water jar and went away into the town and said to the people, come, see a man who told me all that I ever did. Can this be the Christ? Are you guys also walking with me in this one? What happens is this: she sits back, she has this conversation with Jesus, and she's like, are you the Messiah or not? You told me everything about me, and you still love me. You still are hanging out with me, and you know everything. I love this. And the disciples walk up, and what a strange sight, right? Disciples walk up, and there's this woman sitting there. I'm going to assume in my head, in the movie that I have in my head, she's crying. You know what I mean? She's kind of like got tears in her eyes, and Jesus is just like, yeah. You know, like the stoic look on His face. And the disciples walk up, and they're like, do we say anything? No, let's just sit over here until it's done, right? And they just kind of walk over to the side, they just kind of sit down, and they don't say a word. They just watch what's happening. And so she gets all excited. She goes, because He says, I am He. I am He. And he runs away, or she runs away. She runs back into town. But what does she leave? The whole reason she was there. Why? Because her life is utterly going to be different from now on. And by the way, there's a huge significance by her leaving the jar. What did she get? Living water.
That's good.
I don't need this anymore. Do you know that in our life we have things like the water jar that we keep bringing back to certain places, and we keep bringing it up? It might be our past. It might be certain issues that we deal with all the time, and we just keep bringing our water jar to Jesus, and He's asking us one day, He just keeps asking us, do you want this living water? Do you need to get rid of this? Because I'm willing if you are. I'm willing if you are. And I had this one concept, and I'll end it with this. And my one concept was this: I believe almost all of our disappointments are not caused because of what happened, but because what we had envisioned in our minds didn't happen. Because of this, we stay focused on the past and let our future pass us by instead of seizing our moment to move forward. Think about the woman at the well when I'm talking about this. I do not believe she intended to have 6 husbands. I do not believe that was when she was a little girl growing up. I do not believe that this was her mindset. And I believe the reason why she was outcast and disappointed and had these disappointments wasn't because of what was happening around her, but it was because she's not living where she knew she needed to be. And because she didn't live in the place she knew she needed to be, she just sank back and just accepted where she was. Did that make sense? Are you guys with me? And I think so many times when the enemy tells you to don't tell anybody, you get into this place where I'm not going to tell anybody, I'm just going to accept what's in my way. And you just hold on to your water jars. And we just sit there and we hug on to these things. And God is sitting there saying, He's saying, woman and man, I have freedom for you. When are you going to let that jar go? And I think sometimes in our life, when we sit back and we start contemplating where we're at in our life, we do get disappointed sometimes. Maybe you don't have the house you want, the car you want. You're not in the place where you want to be right now. And I think most of the time we look at that, when we get disappointed, it's not because of what's actually happening. Because you're still alive, so something good should be going on. Right? You still have breath. God's not done with you yet. Right? So we're sitting here, we get disappointed, not because of what's happening, but because it's not what we thought it should be. What if we reversed all that? What if we seized moments and just said, I'm not going to deal with this stuff anymore. I'm just going to live for this moment now. I'm going to leave my water jar. I'm going to walk with the living water that I know that I have in Christ, and I want to see what God will do with me. What if the woman at the well looked at Jesus and said, cool story, bro. Dropped her water jar, got the water, filled it up, and walked away. Do you want to know what would have happened? Samaria wouldn't have known Jesus. Because that little moment, that little interaction, when Jesus actually showed care and love and said, I'm not trying to fix you, I just want to let you know I love you for who you are, and I am ready for you to go and be who I called you to be. Woman, if you want to do that, then by all means, go. And she leaves her jar and she runs into town, the town that has already outcasted her. And what does she start doing? She starts preaching. There's a man that told me everything about myself. And here's the thing. You think, oh yeah, this is a great moment. She's running through the town, and what is she yelling? A man told me everything about me. And they're probably like, all the women are like, yeah, I bet he did. Oh, I'm sure there's comments, right? We all think that it was like this nice, happy moment. No, she runs into town, and I'm sure there's talking, and I'm sure there's this. But she didn't give up because she's filled with the living water, and she starts preaching, and this is how it ends. This is how the story is. Many Samaritans from that town believed in him, Jesus, because of the woman's testimony. He told me all that I ever did, and he still loves me. I know that's not in there, but I want to put that as a little caveat. And he still loves me and loved me. So when the Samaritans came to him, they asked him to stay with them, and he stayed there for 2 days. And many more believed because of his word. And this is what I love at the end. It says this, and they said to the woman, it is no longer because of what you said that we believe, for we have heard for ourselves, and we know that this is indeed the Savior of the world. Listen, when you can finally get to that place where we speak out the truth of who God is, when we start to speak out the situations that we're going through, when we start to speak out our burdens, and people start to come around you, and they don't try to fix you, they just love you for who you are and where you're at, all of a sudden you start to get testimony. You start to get this love that God has that we talk about in church all the time. And it's the weirdest thing. Ben, you can start coming up. This is the weirdest thing. If you go to church and you don't feel loved, there should be a problem. Yes or no? Yes. You can talk with me. It's okay. We're friends, I think. If you go to church and you don't feel loved, I believe that's a big problem. And it doesn't matter how big the church is and how big or small it is. It doesn't matter. If we go to church and we don't feel loved, I think we're missing something. Because in a community, we are supposed to feel loved. We're not supposed to feel outcasted. And this is, I believe, what God was trying to bring. This is what Jesus was bringing to the woman at the well. Do you feel loved, woman? Because you should be loved. Are you guys with me on this one? And in our lives, the question becomes, if we don't feel loved, what are we doing? When you speak out, when you don't stay silent about what you're going through, you'll start to see grace, mercy, and love come through. So I share all of that because I believe that there are so many people that go to church to hide. They paint the rosy picture. Everything's all good, but inside they're dying. They're hurting. So here's my challenge to you today. Over on the side over here, we're going to have our prayer team throughout the worship set. If you got a burden, if you got something going on, go share it. See what God would do. See if there can't be life spoken into you this morning. And here's what I'm not saying, just so you get it. I'm not telling you to go on social media and be like, Pastor told me to tell everybody all my stuff. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying there should be safe places for you. Some of your friends, some of your family members, definitely your church. If you can't be comfortable in your church, if you don't feel that in a church, you need to find another church. And I'm telling you that as the pastor of this church. If somehow we screwed up and you don't feel loved and taken care of, and you feel like you can't share things with us, and we've screwed something up for you, we apologize from the pulpit. I apologize, but go find a church where you feel loved. Does that make sense? And that you can share these things, because that's when your testimony is going to start to be built. That's when others are going to find Jesus in you, when you can share these things. Did all of this start to make sense? Did we wrap it up okay? So today, I hope some of you get to leave your jars here. I hope today some of you guys just get to just release some of the burdens that you've been carrying. Because God's ready to move with you. He's ready to give you a testimony. He's ready if you are. So Father, we love you. God, I just pray that there'd be a moment right now. If there is somebody in this place, God, that just needs to just hand over that water jar, to give you a hug. They need to release burdens today. God, may they do it. God, we ask, Lord, that if there's anybody that goes and gets prayer, God, that it would be a holy moment for them as well. That God, not only are the burdens released, but God, that you would give us insight and there would be a prophetic moment, words of knowledge. And God, above all, I pray for love in this place. Not that cheesy kind of ooh feel, but like the actual love, Father God. The love that you can give. The love that that woman felt to leave her jar and run into the city and to share. So Holy Spirit, rise up in our hearts and our minds and be with us during these moments as we praise you.